Hello. Um, so this is the first of a kind of series that hopefully we're going to be doing at My Minds, where we're going to be interviewing professionals about kind of mental health in their particular fields and just kind of, opening up a discussion. And yeah, so first off, we've got my friend. This is Louise. Louise, can you start, please, by telling us a bit about your background and kind of what inspired you to do what you're currently doing?
Cool. Yes. Thanks, George. And thank you for having me on My Mind. It's a pleasure to be talking for you guys. As George said, I'm Louise. I'm a registered associate nutritionist with the Association for Nutrition. I did my undergrad in nutrition at the University of Surrey. So I graduated last year, and I've just been doing my MSc at Loughborough in sport and exercise nutrition. So currently just finishing that off. And I'm currently based in South Wales at the moment whilst I finish that off all online. That's a little bit about me. I'm a powerlifter as well, so really into strength sports.
She's strong. She's very strong. Me, I know Louise from. I'm doing the same. I don't know if people know this about me, but I'm doing the same master's degree as Louise doing the nutrition degree. So that's how we know each other. And then you're setting up your new business, which I'll let you kind of talk about. You have actually set it up now, haven't you?
Yes, so I actually launched it last week. So my business is called Loutritious. So I've actually had that name as a handle on my social medias for about 3 years now. And I think I've always had the intention of setting up my own nutrition business ever since I started my undergrad back in like 2015. It's always been the plan to kind of work freelance as a nutritionist. And it's been in the works for a long time, to be fair, probably about a year. Now seemed like the perfect time. I think, especially with lockdown and everything, it just gave me a bit more time to work on things and put a bit more time and energy into it. So I launched that last week. And it's basically just me working as a freelance nutritionist, providing nutrition support for general health, for sports performance. Obviously that's what I've done my master's in, and you as well. So for sports performance, and also just helping people improve their relationship with food, which I know is going to be sort of the main topic of today. So
Well, I know you, and we've had a few conversations about like mental health and about particularly how nutrition and how nutritionists can affect mental health. And I know you feel quite strongly about that, as the same do I. So I just kind of want to get your opinion. How do you think someone doing your occupation, what you're doing in your business, giving people advice, being a nutritionist, how can that affect someone's mental health? And even more specifically, how dangerous can it be if the nutritionist doesn't do it correctly?
So, I mean, this is a huge topic, but I guess to start off with, I think nutrition professionals in general, whether you're a nutritionist, sports nutritionist, dietitian, whatever it is, I think we have a massive kind of obligation to our clients, our customers, athletes, whoever you work with, to kind of protect their mental health and protect their relationship with food. And I know people talk a lot about relationship with food, and it can sometimes be a little bit wishy-washy, but I think, the way we go about providing nutrition advice to our clients, shouldn't compromise their relationship with food. And I see a lot of people that do things, not necessarily nutrition professionals, but I know a lot of kind of personal trainers and just kind of self-proclaimed nutrition gurus that give out advice or just kind of give out macros and things that can, actually instill behaviors that are more obsessive around food and make people more food focused, make people more anxious about food. So I think the way in which we provide nutrition advice is really important. I think the way that we talk about nutrition and food is really important as well. So, the language that we use around food can really impact how somebody feels about the way that they eat, or their size, or, how they eat, when they eat, how much. So I think it's really important that we don't compromise their relationship with food, and in a lot of cases help people to explore their relationship with food and improve it. I think a lot of the time, if people are, coming to you for nutrition advice, I'm not saying that everybody that comes to you has got, a funky relationship with food, but a lot of people, if they're seeking help with their nutrition, it's probably because they've tried to diet multiple times before and it's been unsuccessful, or they've got, a goal of kind of weight loss, or, anything to do with body composition. And in that instance, I think it's really important to ask people kind of why they want to lose weight or why they want a body composition change. You know, I think, you know, it's perfectly fine if people have got that goal. Like, we should all have autonomy over our own bodies, you know, to say, like, I want to lose weight, or I want to gain muscle, or I want to lose body fat, whatever it is. But I think as a nutritionist, or, you know, whatever the nutrition professional, we shouldn't just be kind of giving out macros and being like, here you go, here's your macros, off you go. You know, it's really important to educate people and also just understand their why. You know, are they doing it because they feel really rubbish about themselves? Are they doing it because they, you know, they genuinely want to improve their health? Are they doing it because they want to improve their performance? I think it, you know, it's really important that we understand their why before we get into anything, because we don't want to encourage them to be doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have kind of weight loss goals, and they think that when they get to their goal weight that they're suddenly going to be so much happier, they're going to be more worthy. But, you know, we know, and, you know, you said it before, that, you know, your worth isn't based on how many calories you eat, what your body looks like, or anything like that. And if you think that losing weight is going to, you know, improve your mindset of yourself and your body, then that's just not the case. So, you know, I think it's really important to help people understand their why and just make them realize that it doesn't matter what your weight is, like, you're worthy no matter what your size. And that, you know, we need to understand that our bodies are always changing, you know, throughout our life cycle. They're always changing. They'll change depend on the season, you know, as we get older, depending on what type of training and stuff we do. So I think, you know, it's really important that people understand that and just respect themselves as they are, rather than constantly trying to change it. And I think it, you know, it is the role of a nutritionist to help people understand that, and not just, you know, take it as it is and say, yeah, okay, you know, that's fine, we'll just help you lose weight.
I think there's some research. I should have had this prepared, but there's some research by I think it was Grant et al. Like in 2019, that showed restrictive dieting actually links closer to like having like emotional issues with eating. So, and the more restricted, and you're saying, you know, people with counting macronutrients and things like that. And I know there's a lot of research that links specifically if you're using tracking devices for weight loss goal, you know, kind of like you're saying, you know, if they're defining themselves by the way they look or the way they eat, you know, and then tracking that and using that tracking method as a way to justify to themselves that they're doing things correctly and that they're worthy, that's where the issue comes in.
And I think, you know, it all links into that. I'm sure people have come across it, that cycle of dieting. You know, you want to diet, so you start restricting, you become too restrictive, you have cravings, you then overeat, then you feel guilty and shame, you have weight regain, and then it starts again. And, you know, I think it's important for us as nutritionists to give advice in a way that isn't restrictive and doesn't feed into that cycle, because you know, I've been there myself in that cycle, and it's horrible. And it just isn't conducive to kind of sustainable change in your diet, or, you know, having compassion for yourself. So, you know, I think, yeah, it's really, really important that, and the thing is, I'm not completely against macro tracking. I've done it myself in the past, and it can be a useful tool. But I think we just need to meet people where they're at. Like, if somebody's already counting calories, then in some ways it can help to improve their relationship with food, to say, look, you're restricting your calories a lot, but let me show you that if you start eating a little bit more, eating more carbohydrates or whatever it is, that actually you know, you're not going to get super fat, you can still reach your goals. And, you know, it can be an educational tool, but I think for the most part, from what, you know, I've seen kind of professionally and personally, that, you know, if you track calories and track everything you eat for an extended period of time, then it just leads to a bad relationship with food, and it makes people more obsessive around food, more stressed, more anxious, feel more guilt, and also it makes it difficult for you to get away from it as well. Once you start tracking, you forget how to eat, and you forget how to kind of listen to your body, and when you're actually hungry and when you're actually full, because you've got this external cue that is telling you how much you should eat, you know, and when. And in a lot of cases, it takes away from the kind of nutrition side of it, because you're just eating things that fit into your calorie goals, whatever that is. And like I said, I've been there, I've done that in the past, and it's not, not a great place to be in. So yeah, I think,
Yeah, I agree. I think restrictive and kind of macro counting and food tracking, for me personally, it just doesn't work. And just from personal experience with the most people that I speak to who do track, maybe maybe my sample of people, I talk to people who have like mental health issues in general, just because of what I do. But I feel like it's much more commonplace that I hear someone say, "Oh, I was tracking food and it made me feel worse," or
yeah,
it's rare that I come across people
yeah,
who who say that it tracked and it helped.
mhm,
Although that there is research that shows that it does help. It helps with improves diet, and then also tracking exercise can improve the amount of physical activity you do.
yeah,
So you're talking about how these external cues can change the ways that we um, the way, like, we almost forget how to take our body's cues and stuff. Is there a way that you know of? I'm kind of leading into here because I do know that is there a way that you know of that people can improve that, and how it does help people?
yeah. So I guess we're going to talk about intuitive eating, right? So I think intuitive eating is, in itself is an actual kind of framework. So I think a lot of people throw around kind of eating intuitively and intuitive eating, but there is an actual framework that was made and created by two dietitians back in kind of 1995, which was actually the year I was born. So a long time ago. And I think it's only recently been picked up in the last kind of few years. I think kind of tracking macros and if it fits your macros and all that kind of stuff is sort of kind of started to go on the wayside in terms of being a trend, because that was a massive trend for a while, and I know a lot of people still do it. But I think intuitive eating is becoming a lot more recognised. And there's a lot of nutritionists and dietitians that have kind of brought it to the forefront. So Laura Thomas, she's written another book about it, and what it basically is, it's a set of principles. So it's not rules, and that's the big difference. I think if you're constantly on a diet and things, you have lots of rules that restrict the way that you eat. So it could be restricting how much you eat, restricting the types of foods that you eat, restricting specific foods, just not being in tune with your hunger and your fullness. And intuitive eating really is a set of 10 principles set around helping you become more in tune with your body, which I know sounds quite fuddy-duddy, and a lot of people are like, oh, whatever. But at the end of the day, if you're in tune with when you're actually hungry and when you're actually full, and you're not always eating for emotional reasons, you're not using it as a coping mechanism, then that is the best way to be ultimately. So if you start working with a client, then you want them eventually to get to the place where they're intuitive eating. You don't want to be tracking all your food until you're 85, because
Yeah.
it's just not realistic.
in
So
in in regards to the kind of fuddy duddy thing, I hear,
yeah,
because obviously we're in kind of the science world with nutrition and stuff, and I hear
yeah,
a lot about people are so against the idea of these fuddy duddy things because it's all
yeah,
science based. But if it helps, why does it matter? Like, if
yeah.
even if you do think it's fuddy duddy, if it does help you improve your relationship with food, then why ignore it?
Sure. I was just going to say, like, intuitive eating is all about taking the guilt and the shame away from how you eat. And, I think a lot of us have been in that place or are in that place where, you feel guilty for eating a chocolate biscuit and things like that. And it's just ridiculous. Like, unless you stole that piece of food, you should not feel guilty about it. So, I think that is the ultimate kind of underpinning of intuitive eating, is just taking away all the guilt and the shame and allowing you to have kind of freedom around food and not be so food focused, not be obsessive. And it really helped me personally, and I've been using it with clients. I've used it over the years, some of the activities and techniques to help people with intuitive eating, and it makes such a difference, because when you stop spending all your energy worrying about your food, what you're going to eat next, all those different things, then you have so much more energy to just spend on other things in your life that are more important. Because we all eat, we all have to eat every day, and it's so easy for that to for you to control what you eat as a coping mechanism, or as a distraction. And we need to stop spending so much energy on that. And I think that's the role, again, of a nutritionist, is to help people become less food focused. Let me worry about what, you kind of should be eating, or the things that you can do to improve your diet, and help you with that, rather than you constantly worrying about it. So yeah,
I
sorry, that
think
was a
that's
bit of,
that's a side of, of a nutritionist that I don't think a lot of people realize is there. Like, that we're not just there to make you look muscular, or like lose body
absolutely,
fat or anything. We're there to help with these kind of things as well.
yeah,
We can take that pressure off for a bit and help you kind of become in tune with the way you're eating. And
yeah,
you no longer have to, like, from my personal experience with my disordered eating and stuff, when I would track my weight, in the morning, well, the night before, I would plan what I'm going to eat the next day. Then in the morning, I would double check that it's right. And then after each meal, I'd constantly, even though I've got it all planned out and everything's right, every single time I'd eat, even with it planned out, I would have to double check, because I was so worried that I might be off. And if I was off by like 10 calories, I would be so upset.
yeah.
That's to the point where, it gets to the extreme. But there are
Mhm.
people out there who have those issues, and I didn't follow this exact intuitive eating protocol, but
No,
that's kind of what I've lent towards, is
yeah,
intuitive eating, and I
yeah.
definitely want to learn more about this and hopefully do the same course that you did.
Yeah, and it's funny, right? Because I think a lot of people at the moment, especially because of social media and things, they think that nutrition is just counting calories and counting macros. And it's not. Like, I did 4 years of my undergrad, I've done a year of a master's, and you never get taught to give people macros, right? So you
Yeah.
you get taught that, how to calculate what somebody's calories might be and the amount of protein that they might need depending on their sport or their activity levels or whatever. But you're not then told to tell the athlete or
Yeah.
whatever,
we
oh, here are
never
your calories.
we never had a lecture on my fitness pal.
No, like, it's literally meant to be our job to calculate it and then help translate that into food. Like, that is the point in a nutritionist. And like I said, there is a place for, people tracking their food and, having a little bit of awareness, but not for everybody. And like you said, for the most part, it ends up in people being more stressed about food than they were in the first place. So there's that. And also, as we've already kind of mentioned and alluded to, there's such a massive link between psychology and nutrition. So, it's important for a nutritionist to know their scope of practice. I can't, as a nutritionist, we can't diagnose people or work with people with eating disorders.
Mhm.
So when I talk about, having a bad or a poor relationship with food, I'm not talking necessarily about people with eating disorders, because that's, out of my remit. I'm talking about people who, have a bit, some issues with food. They can't eat without tracking everything. They feel stressed about food. They're, being restrictive. They're restricting how much or what they eat. So that's kind of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Just a bit of a disclaimer there. But in terms of like I said, with psychology, you have to know what your limits are. And I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not going to be going deep into somebody's life history and their trauma to kind of work out where, their food issues have come from. I think a lot of kind of surface level food issues, and I'm talking about people that don't necessarily have full-on eating disorders, a lot of it comes from the media, and our perceptions of what we should look like and how we should eat, and comparing ourselves to kind of Fitspos online and all that kind of stuff. So I think a lot of it does come from that. But it's funny as well, because I'm not sure what your kind of experience is, but we don't get taught a lot about psychology and the kind of psychology of eating in uni. So even though I did my undergrad and I've now done my master's, we haven't had much input in terms of psychology. We had a little bit in our undergrad but it was more about behavior change, which, is another important aspect, but we didn't have much about, people's relationship with food. We had some stuff on clinical eating disorders, but nothing about just helping people generally with, how to give them advice without, making them feel weird about food. So a lot of, what I've learned, and I know a lot of what other nutritionists have learned, is stuff that they've learned themselves, either from practice, and their own experiences with their own clients, or, it's like I said, people like Laura Thomas, and, just reading books, doing your own research. A lot of, what I've learned is from doing my own research.
Mhm.
So it's difficult, and, it's difficult enough when you have people that aren't qualified in nutrition trying to give out advice, and often it ends up, like I said, just being kind of calorie tracking and things like that. But a lot of the time, people in our own profession haven't had haven't been given the knowledge to go out and help people with their relationship with food.
Yeah, I was shocked by our master's degree that we didn't have one lecture on disordered eating or anything.
No. And it's funny, right? Because we know that athletes, especially at a high level, are more at risk of having issues with eating because of the pressures of, maybe feeling like they need to be a certain size to perform well, or, if you've got an aesthetic sport like gymnastics or dancing, then there's more of a pressure there to look a certain way. So it's funny that we wouldn't get anything on that.
Yeah,
At all. And I'm not even talking high level athletes. I think any athlete at any level is going to be more at risk of having eating issues, not necessarily eating disorder, but eating issues, because it's just another factor of performance, and people love data as well. So when you start bringing numbers, in whatever sense that is, in terms of measuring your body fat, or if it is tracking your food or whatever, then you're more likely to become obsessed with that. So it's funny that we wouldn't get taught anything. But like I said, I think it's really important as a nutrition professional that you go out and you do your own research. I'm not saying that every nutritionist needs to go out and fix everybody's problems with food, and I'm not saying that everybody that comes to me, I'm like, right, firstly, we need to fix your relationship with food, because some people are fine. But I think, it's like I said, whatever you do in terms of giving nutrition advice, I just think you need to make sure that you don't compromise their relationship with food. And if you notice any issues, then you work on it with them. Or, in serious cases, if somebody does have an eating disorder, it's really important that we as nutrition professionals can recognize that and refer them on to a dietitian, or in the first instance, their GP. There's lots of eating disorder charities and stuff like that as well. So it's important that we have that knowledge, even if you don't necessarily feel comfortable enough to work with somebody on their relationship with food. It's important that you recognize if they are having issues, so that you can refer them to somebody that does. Because I think it's just our duty as nutrition professionals to be able to do that, because we can have such a big impact on somebody's mental health, both good and bad. If you the way you talk about food and the way you advise on nutrition is problematic, then you can really send somebody down a hole. Whereas on the opposite side, if you have compassion for your clients and talk about food in a certain way, then you can make them realize that nutrition isn't the be all and end all. And I'm saying that as a nutritionist, but it's important that you help people, but you make them realize that it's fine. Like, you had a Mars bar, like, you're okay. You're not going to die. I'm not going to shout at you. Like, that's just not my style. I think, and like you've already said, research has shown that if you have a strict, if you're restricting quite strictly, then it's likely to cause problems. So
in regards to I know you said there was 10 kind of steps, but maybe in regards to them, or maybe just from personal experience, do you have, for anyone listening who is kind of concerned with eating, do you have any tips for people on how they can maybe start to move towards a better and healthier understanding of nutrition and food?
So it's quite a long and in-depth process with all the kind of 10 principles, but I guess in the first instance, get help from somebody who knows what they're doing and can help you with that relationship with food, because it is really difficult to do it on your own. I think you and I have probably done that, but because we're in the kind of nutrition sphere, we've known where to look. We understand the science, so we understand why a lot of what you see online isn't correct.
And just a disclaimer there as well, when you're saying someone who knows what they're doing, not someone who claims they know what they're doing, as on Instagram, or because we, especially in the nutrition industry, we can say there's a lot of that, like, misinformation.
For sure. And for anybody who doesn't know, a nutritionist isn't a protected title. So anyone can call themselves a nutritionist. It doesn't matter if they've done a degree and a master's degree like you and I have, a PhD, or if they've just done a weekend course, they can call themselves a nutritionist. And that is where the difficulty comes from. So if you're looking for a nutritionist, try and make sure that they have at least a BSc or an undergrad degree in nutrition. A lot of the times, if they're registered with the Association for Nutrition, so like myself, then they will be trustworthy, because that is basically registered that shows that you have the scientific underpinning and the experience that you practice nutrition science. Other than that, there's another register called the Sport and Exercise Nutrition Register, which we'll probably join when we finish our masters, and that kind of proves that somebody has got the the scientific underpinning as well to help you. A dietitian is a protected title, so dietitians have done a degree, and people can't call themselves a dietitian unless they've done a degree in dietetics. So they've got a protected title. So dietitians are pretty much always trustworthy because you can't call yourself a dietitian otherwise. And dietitians can also work with clinical kind of diseases or clinical issues. So they can work with people with eating disorders, so actual clinically diagnosed eating disorders, and they can work with other things like diabetes and things like that, whereas a nutritionist can't. So that is an important thing to kind of decipher between. Or, you know, your GP, if you're really having problems, then go and see your GP and they can refer you onto a dietitian. So that is in the first instance. I think as well as that, I guess the first step is trying to recognize, especially online, because, you know, we all spend a lot of time online on social media, is to try and unpick a lot of what people say. You know, there's a lot of fitspos, and, you know, I always complain about that. Or, you know, even personal trainers to an extent. I'm not saying all personal trainers do this, but a lot, you know, give out nutrition advice or talk about nutrition when they're not qualified. They don't have the scientific, you know, kind of underpinning. So, you know, it's really important to pick apart what you see online in terms of nutrition, in terms of body image. And I think, you know, body kind of positivity and self-love and stuff is becoming, you know, more popular and is, again, becoming a bit of a trend. But try and pick apart the stuff that you see online. I think trying to work to you know, try and feel your hunger and fullness cues, because like I said, a lot of people have lost those because they've got all these external cues telling them what they should and shouldn't eat and how much, etc. So just trying to become more in tune with your body, and I know that's easier said than done. And I think the other thing is just trying to have compassion for yourself. Removing the guilt from eating is the biggest thing that made a difference for me personally, and is the biggest thing that I see make a difference for a lot of people. So, you know, if you have certain foods that you stray away from because you're afraid of eating them, so that could be things, usually it's things high in carbohydrate, or it's sugary things, or, you know, you're typically kind of less healthy things. You know, writing out a list of those things and just trying one by one to eat them when you fancy them and not feel the guilt around it. And that is not an overnight process. It's not you're going to wake up one day, eat all those things and be like, I'm fine. But it's something that you will continually need to work on. And that's something that, you know, I do and I've done with my clients. And it's something that has made a massive difference for me. And I think the thing is as well, when you're trying to work on your relationship with food, sometimes you need to, well, most of the time, you need to take a step back from whatever your goal is in terms of your nutrition or, you know, your body composition, and really work on your relationship with food. And it might feel for a while that you're going backwards in terms of, you know, your kind of weight or whatever it is. But actually taking the time to work on your relationship with food makes such a massive difference, because it just gives you so much freedom, like I said, to spend energy on things that are important. So I think, yeah, often you need to take a step back and just put your kind of goals to the side and focus on, you know, how you feel around food. And just to add as well, I think a lot of people think that intuitive eating, you know, as a whole is just kind of void of any nutrition. People think, oh, intuitive eating, like I couldn't eat intuitively because I would just eat cake all day. And I'm telling you now, you won't. You might do at the start, and that's what I mean by people feeling like they're going backwards. But once you give yourself kind of food freedom and allow yourself to eat kind of the foods that you want, you'll soon realize that eating cake all day isn't enjoyable and it doesn't make you feel good. So, you know, kind of nutrition as a whole, I don't know why I'm doing that because it is, you know, nutrition. But I guess, you know, you put it on the wayside at first, but it is still a massive part of intuitive eating, because it's teaching you to eat the foods that make you feel great and, you know, give you energy and help you perform well for the most part, but also including the foods that are maybe a little bit less healthy, and not feeling guilt about it, and just being able to include those things in your diet. And one thing as well is that I wish people would realize is that no food is inherently good or bad. And that is a massive thing for me that I try and tell my clients, is that I think we put foods into categories of good and bad, right? So the good things are typically your more healthy things, fruit, veg, all that kind of stuff. And then your less healthy things might be pizza, cake, chocolate, whatever it is.
Hmm.
But I always challenge people to say, well, what's wrong with a pizza, for example? It's got carbohydrate. If you've got meat on there, it's going to have some protein. It's going to have B12. If you've got veg on there, you're going to be getting your all those vitamins and minerals from veg. It's going to have cheese, which has got calcium. It's got a tomato base, which is another vegetable. And apart from that, it tastes great. It makes you feel good, as long as you don't have guilt around it. So I think that is another thing that I try and break down, is when people have got this issue with a certain food, I'm like, yeah, but why?
Yeah,
And the
no,
thing is, as to add to that as well, food doesn't necessarily need to have that much nutrition to make us feel good. So yeah, I mean, intuitive eating is a balance between helping people to kind of listen to their hunger and fullness cues, and not kind of over emotionally eat and things like that, but also eat nutritious foods and foods that they enjoy within that, because there's no perfect diet. And I think people get so carried away with that and compare what they eat to people online and things like that, when actually, it's all about the context of your diet. Like, one kind of bad meal isn't going to mean that your diet is bad, the same way that eating one salad isn't going to make your diet perfect. So I think it's making people realize that and just have compassion for themselves.
yeah, I think as well. Just briefly, like the compassion's a great word, because I think it's important as well that this is going to be a process. You're not just going to be like, right now I'm intuitively eating. There's
Exactly.
being compassionate about the process. Like sometimes you're going to try and eat this piece of pizza and you are going to feel a bit bad, but that's okay as well. It is a process. It's not like I'm sure you're the same as me. I didn't just feel better. I still don't feel 100% with eating all the time.
Absolutely.
It
Yeah.
it doesn't just you don't just flick the switch and you're fine.
Absolutely. It's an ongoing process. And like you said, even for me now, like, I still have days where I'm like, I shouldn't really eat that because I haven't, trained today. And then I have to kind of stop myself and be like, Lou, don't be ridiculous. Like, you can eat, you're an adult, you can do what you want. Yeah, it is an ongoing process. It's not overnight. And everybody's different. Like, for people that have had issues for a long time, it might take them a little bit longer to kind of rewire their brain, I guess, about the way that they think about food and the way that they eat. So yeah, it's definitely not an overnight process.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Lou.
Um,
Just to finish, can you please kind of let people know where they can get in touch with you online?
yeah, for sure. So I'm sure you're going to tag me anyway, but my Instagram, my Twitter handles are at Loutritious. And on my Instagram and Twitter page, there's links to my website, which is loutritious.com. And you can send me an email as well, loutritious@outlook.com. Or you can just send me a message on social media.
Awesome. Thank you very
Thanks
much,
for
Lou.
having me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.